So we're here today at the Resipole Gallery with artists Leonie Charlton and Lucy Gray to talk a little bit about their collaborations for this show. Yeah. So do either of you guys have anything you want to start off by saying? Like, do you want to tell us a little bit about what the show is, or what's in it?
Yeah, well this is... Shall I say something?
Yes.
This is the first time we've sat in the exhibition together, and it feels like a really special moment, actually. So it's actually the culmination of a whole year's work. So Lucy and I went and stayed in the Bothy at Lochette last November. And that was when we started working on this project, and actually when we came up with the title Recovering Ground. So it's a whole year.
It is, and that was quite interesting, actually, coming up with the start.
Yeah.
We'd had, I'd say, lots of beginnings of ideas that we sort of let loose and then drew in close, and then we had, I'd say that it didn't all, that was the beginning, as in timeline beginning, but we didn't begin at the start, maybe. It grew. So the title came further along. We had a working title, and then the title, it wasn't that we assigned it, it was just that it grew
did we
from
not
the
come up
work.
with the title last November?
No.
That's hilarious. Sure, we might have to scrap all that.
Okay. Sure, it'll be fine. I think it'll be
No,
good.
because I think that's actually really interesting.
Oh, it was April!
Because
You're
we were
right,
talking
Lucy.
about, and we were having a walk and talking about our
you're
process.
absolutely right. That's so funny, I'd completely forgotten.
And you were talking about where your writing was going, and I was talking about where my work was going.
Yeah.
And we were talking about walking the same
Yeah,
place.
so
And then you said, that's really interesting because we're walking the same space, and should we do the piece on walking the same space? And
Yeah.
then it grew. That was the beginning. That was a bit about, so we were talking about covering the same ground over and over, and should
Yeah.
we use the shape of the walk as a something
that's
to
right,
base
that was the starting place, yeah. And then
you said, oh, but actually there are other elements that come in as well
Yeah.
that we could use and call it, and then you did your writing. And then the title came before your writing. It's quite interesting because it is all quite organic.
it's
But I think that is probably, it sounds chaos, but that is
That's how
our
it
process.
goes.
It's very
It is
natural and
great.
organic, and it's not very
It
linear.
is creative chaos, that's exactly what it is, and it's fascinating collaborating because as one individual working on any project it's pretty chaotic, but if you bring two into it, we've got these multiple processes crisscrossing and doing their own thing,
And a lot of trust, a lot
of faith in the process.
yes, and letting go and hoping that we'll both land in a compatible space, which
So a starting place that I think we may both agree on is that Nan Shepherd, the writer,
yes.
what she wrote famously, the known grows with the knowing. So we both wanted to revisit the same place again and again and again to deepen our connection, to deepen our knowledge of place, and then see what came out of that. And it was full of surprises, wasn't it? Each time we went back and spent time in this relatively small area by Lochette, where the river Kinglas comes down into Lochette, and we had this very small area that we got to know intimately, and a lot of what is here today came from that.
Yes, and it was the revisiting it, I think, that took us to the same.
Yeah, and it was like we drilled a little. Drill isn't even the right. We fell a little deeper with each visit, and I think it was a really important aspect that we stayed there, that we could stay in the Bothy and go to sleep, listening to the sounds, wake up, swim in the loch or not.
I think that spending time is actually it's that being present
Yeah.
really gets you to relate to the landscape in a different way, and I think it's where that's the sort of the what do you call it, the touch paper for both our creativity, is that actually experiencing, spending time and being present.
Absolutely, and it was
And
very
where that takes us.
Yeah, really experiential. And then when we went away back home to our respective homes, that's when we actually created
The physical work.
the poem,
Yeah.
and we created
Yeah.
the sculpture.
Mm.
But you almost needed the distance. I certainly couldn't write work on the poem when I was there. All I could do was just being present.
Yes, and I agree, you need it to settle, and
Yeah, and then with that distance, with the perspective of distance, things surface, what's important surfaces, and that can often be really
Yeah.
surprising.
Just
and
listening to you guys talk about like your experience of being there, and you're saying about like wanting to swim in the morning, and I know that's maybe not something
just her.
that's quite up to you. Yeah, I was thinking like, how do you guys think you work in very different ways when individually? On
That's
your
a
own?
really good question.
Because I mean, your
would
practices are very different.
Yes, I'd say that. Yes, we do. I'd say that Leonie thinks in a more landscape, in a more, do you call it, in a bigger landscape, a bigger context, and I'm a more focused on the smaller things. So for me, it's a sense of texture and substance is more at the core of my work, and for BD it's more, so BD Leonie, interchangeable, it's a more of a sense of the bigger place and more contextualised within. But the place where our creative processes really meet is a sort of animal buzz with nature. It's a sort of a reciprocal integrity. Is that too much of a mouthful? But it's
a conversation.
Experiencing conversation with landscape is.
Yeah. And when we say landscape, of course, we mean so much more. There's the geological landscape, and then the layers of memory that make up landscape, and stories that we've absorbed from that place by speaking to people. And so we've got the layers of memory, the geology, and of course the plants and the animals and human interaction that we've had in that place. But I would agree that I was going to say earlier, your process is, I would say, feverish and focused. You become incredibly focused and intent. And I'm more, it's more of a, what I want to say is wired to the moon process. It's like, so I think what you said about it being a wider perspective is true. I go into quite a big, I want to say spiritual, but without any religious faith attached to that word, but it feels like a spiritual expanse.
Yeah.
And the physicality of the landscape is what it feeds that. So, would you?
Yes, I'd say that's.
And then we have these conversations. We talk, don't we? So when you come out of your fever, and I stop feeling inadequate in my spaced out lack of focus, then we come together over cups of tea or supper or when we're walking, and we talk about where we are, and incredible things come out.
And what I loved about having the focus of an exhibition is there's so many different strands we could have picked up and walked along, and it was actually quite a sort of, there was a lot of trust, no doubt, definitely no doubt, but a lot of trust in letting go, and we both went off and thought and created and came back, and we were going to do, you know, have several different bases for the exhibition, and then there was quite a long pause when I was working and Leonie was working, and then
we had very little. In fact, we
Yes.
had very little to do with each other in terms of the exhibition.
yes,
That's
but the
quite interesting.
building that we've been doing, again, it's that chaos thing. We were working on things, but we didn't know how they were going to fit. I didn't know with my work. I knew it was very right, but I didn't know how on earth we were going to make it work as a coherent body of work. And then you produced your first draft of Recovering Ground, which is what the exhibition is built around, and that was such a perfect structure in itself, because originally we were going to have several bits of writing, and then we were going to have a long narrative poem.
Various
And-
ideas, and in the end this one piece of writing really worked.
It's kind of tied the whole thing
Yeah.
together.
Yes.
Yeah.
But you're right, I mean, a real trust in the unforeseen and the unplanned.
Yeah.
And like a walk, you know, like the walks we do, Lucy, the creation of this exhibition was a metaphorical walk. You take one step in front of the other, and it's an adventure and a discovery, and you don't know what the next step's going to bring. So
Yes,
it was-
that's so true. And again, like being in the landscape, spending time with what we're doing, I think sort of honed the sense of its, you know, shuffling around. It sort of found its integrity. Is what it did, just from spending time and focusing.
Just when you guys are talking about trust and like that kind of like having a trust for what each other is going to, what each of you are going to produce, or what the next step's going to be, it's quite interesting. Just obviously with this, like, you know, we talked about this being like a collaboration, but then it sounds like, you know, you're coming together for these like experiences, if you will, like going on walks, or whether it's a cups of tea or something, and then the actual like production of whether it be like words or like something visual like sculpture is happening in a kind of isolation. But I quite like that. Like it seems like, you know, there's quite a lot of trust to share that experience with someone and then have them go away, and you're waiting to see what it is that they're going to come back with, and that's going to be the next step in the process. It's quite an interesting way of collaborating.
And I also find it really helpful, if that's the right word, having Bede's sort of second eye on the work. So there are some pieces that are not in the show because they didn't, not because they're not brilliant pieces, but not because Bede didn't like them or I didn't like them, but just because they don't rest well within the writing.
Yeah.
And they have to, apparently, people coming around the exhibition have, the question that most people have asked is which came first, the writing or the sculpture? And
it's
I
impossible to say.
said, it's impossible to say, and what a compliment that people were not going, well, obviously this amazing bit of writing, and then the sculptors work towards that, or
Or
the amazing
vice
sculptors and the writers.
It is a collaboration.
And
They
it's,
are
neither of us
inseparable.
like working in teams or working with other people.
Yeah,
so-
which is quite
It's quite
ironic,
solitary.
really, I suppose.
And we do still work independently, and we are still solitary workers, but just as a collaborative.
Yeah.
It's really interesting.
So I wonder if we can be brave enough to think about, I mean, we've talked in quite a broad sense about the process.
Yeah.
I wonder if we can be brave enough
Talk about some
to dig into the themes, like what is this exhibition, so for people who haven't been here.
Yes.
Yeah, that's a good idea, I think.
Yeah, I mean, Lucy and I will have slightly different interpretations. I know we have a lot of common ground, and then we have our own takes on our own personal interpretation of what's going on in Recovering Ground.
Would
How
you
do
like
you-
to start by giving a brief description
Yeah.
of the piece of writing? And it's
Well, Yeah, I can, and of course I have to be careful because I don't want. What I love about it is people will have their own interpretations, but I feel confident. But I think it's fine to say it's about the parts of ourselves that we exile through wounds or a way of living that isn't necessarily healthy for us, parts of ourselves that can break away from us, and that certain things we do in life we can make ourselves whole again. And certainly for me, always going into the landscape, spending time being very present with rocks and water and our fellow creatures helps me feel whole. So yeah, recovering ground, it's this idea of geographically, intimately spending time in a place and covering that ground again and again. And then it's also recovering personal ground. So through that process we rediscover parts of ourselves that we have abandoned. I think we all do that in life. Things happen and we abandon ourselves. So anything that helps you feel whole again.
Right.
Yes,
Does that
I'd say, and I'd say that is a brilliant description of not just the exhibition and the writing, but our process. I think that's how we relate to landscape a lot, and it's why this writing really resonated with me, and I found it just really exciting matching sculptures to the writing, because I think I very much see myself reflected in landscape experientially, and I see my wounded self and I see my joyous self and I see it's spending time in your less than nothing and more than you could ever be all at the same time.
And that's a really important point, the joyous self, like connecting in with joy is really important.
Yes, and
for both of us.
Profoundly surprising,
yeah.
And wonderful.
Yeah.
And yes, a very healing experience. And I think the exhibition it's about being healed through landscape, and hopefully through people getting to understand landscape more, or us being able to be part of the healing of the landscape as well.
Yeah, that reciprocal relationship. The Gallic concepts that John McFarlane has spoken to us so beautifully about ducas, which is the landscape belongs to us, we belong to the landscape, and an inherited sense of belonging, and then that the cultural belonging, which is dulcas, which is more music and folklore. So he talks to us about these different types of belonging, and we are both coming in as outsiders, interestingly, which can bring fresh perspective to place, but we also bring a sense of outsiderness.
When you say that, sorry, like coming in as outsiders, do you want to
so
what you mean by
the ducas, as I understand it, is a hefting to landscape that you've inherited down through the generations.
Okay.
So both Lucy and I don't have that inherited.
And just we're talking about in relation to the Glen King bus. Yeah.
Or any place.
Right.
It's wherever it is. But that by spending time and connecting in with the place, you create your own levels of belonging.
Okay, yeah. As opposed to something inherited, yeah.
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah. What else we'd like to know? Do you want to talk a little bit about the making of the sculptures, the creation of the sculptures for the show, and how that intertwined with Edie's writing?
Well, that's interesting because it doesn't. It actually, I'd say that's, we connect when we're in the place of creativity, and we're buzzing and being creative in our own ways, and then we go away, and I don't ever say I'm thinking of, I do say I'm thinking of doing a piece around, like I remember one walk, not part of this exhibition, but I think it's just quite a good example of, we were walking along and it started to rain, and we were walking across the stream, and the raindrops fell on the stones, and there's this beautiful sort of Prussian blue illumination of what was there that hadn't been seen, and we both said, interesting, wow, gosh, how moving was that, and that will at some stage, that will become a piece, but I don't say to BD, so the way I'm going to interpret that in the sculpture is, can you do something right about that? We've kept that in our, we've logged it, and at some further collaboration it's quite possible that will come out as a very strong piece, because it was a moment that we both responded to at the time. So the room is full of pieces that are made completely independently but born of the same moment in time.
Yeah, and the same like memory, do you think, or
experience
like
rather than
memory?
memory, I think.
Okay.
It's more abstract than, yes, experience, creative connectivity to the land, to the physicality of being there, and the light and the everything of being in a place and just spending time in a place.
And I think the marrying of the language with the texture, the texture that I often have my mouth literally waters when I look at Lucy's sculpture. So I have this very strong physiological reaction to the textures and the feeling of the piece, and marrying that with the language is really powerful.
And it's more than
much more than the parts on their own.
Because I would also say that I make the sculptures, they're more meditative objects than sculptures to me. I would like people to spend time, and they're made to spend time with. So you don't lose the illusion if you look closer. Hopefully it draws you closer in. And Bede's words are the perfect space, the environment to start. It's like when you're doing a meditation. If you're given
kind of
the right
guide.
theme for the meditation, then you can expand wherever you want to go. But it just gives you a point to start.
Guide to
And I think it's very powerful. I think it encourages so much
wider
more to be
horizons.
seen. Yeah.
It encourages us to see beyond the limits of our own work.
Yes.
Yeah, that's really nice.
Yeah.
That's good. So this is the first time you guys have seen the show together, right?
Yes.
I just wondered if you had anything to say about how you feel about seeing the two. I mean, not that we're thinking of them as separate components, but your two parts of this work. How you feel about seeing them together?
Well, I'm delighted. I'm delighted with how it's come. I say it has come together. That's very passive. Andrew and Kerry at Resipole Gallery, at Resipole Studios, have done an amazing job.
And that makes all the difference. The lighting and the hanging.
The temperature of the air, the smell of the room. It's
really interesting.
Yeah. It is all part of the experience.
Yeah, my fingertips are tingling with it all.
And I'd also like to say that a whole other area that we haven't talked about is sound. And we've got the most wonderful reading of Bede's work by Joanna Tope, which has got such gravity, and then Gray and Charlton has composed a piece especially for it, which also it brings in the saltiness of the air, and it's just wonderful. So the whole thing together, it's all very well having an idea, and it's a lot of hard work, and we've done a lot of imagining and planning, but when the whole thing comes together and you've got all these creative people putting their energies in, you get it all together, and I think it's really exciting.
Yeah.
It's really exciting.
strange that this is the first time you guys have been here together. And I wondered if you had any plans to like spend more time here, or does it, you know, because often, like I guess a show is a kind of culmination of something, and you know, I think it is one thing I've learned, like through going through like art education and stuff. It's just that often the kind of like journey is a little bit more. It sounds really cliche, but like the journey is a little bit more important than the end result. And I wondered if you guys felt like that.
I'd say in a way, yes. I think you're agreeing to. I'd say that's, and I would say it's a bit like in my studio. Quite often, I'm inspired by the stuff I've thrown out on the floor more than by the thing I've just done. And I'd say that with this exhibition, there's a lot of unfinished stuff. So this is like it's almost like when the lichen blossoms. You know, that's a really special moment. But there's so many other beautiful seasons that we've still got so many threads we can bind together to make other collaborations.
So what's the next kind of step, if you will?
Well, life circular. And if you go back to the beginning of this piece, when we said it doesn't start at the beginning, we quite possibly could have some more things in the pipeline that we're not even quite aware of.
But they might be working away on their own, and they haven't shown us yet.
So there are no titles, but there's.
Do you feel like things could come like as a response to the show, to seeing the work in situ?
It will. Yeah, sure it will. Yeah, and we've put so much into our foundation, really, that it's got a life of its own. So it will
continue to grow.
I would say so.
By itself, maybe.
I really don't think we need to push it. There's a lot going on under the surface all the time.
And what I think is really exciting is that I'm sure we will always have that creative spark in landscape together, which is really exciting, but we've gone through the chiselling away at dreams to make them into reality, and we've survived it fairly painlessly, and that
doesn't sound very painless.
That's funny.
No.
Have we chiselled away at our dreams? Say more about that.
Yes, I'd say that, well, because the idea of walking in a landscape and feeling the feelings and then saying, let's make this into reality,
is excruciating.
It's lovely to say, but the reality of it, the physicality, the logistics, the timing, the commitments, the feeling terribly exposed and inadequate with the brilliant creative person that you're committed to, and you're not going to be up to their brilliance. And
but you can have all sorts of feelings of insecurity around each other. No, that's a very good point, and so there's something bittersweet about the exhibition actually being here. It's wonderful, but of course I'm really delighted, and yes, that's a certain amount of chiselling away at dreams. You're right, I've never seen it like that, but quite often with writing you have this idea and then you put something down on page and it's utter shite compared to the magic
that was inside.
But and then you work at it, and then you work at it, and then you work at it, and you hope that somehow you will get somewhere near that original feeling that is indescribable, actually, in language.
That's really interesting.
And I would say that that's exactly the way I feel about it. You have this dream. Yeah. So, the second sculpture in the exhibition.
Which one's that, sorry?
Which is When You Come Back to Me. Okay. That was a really strong feeling of being in landscape and feeling your true self.
And the opening of potential. I mean, that sculpture embodies potential.
But then it's how do you put that down, and you try 1,000,001 different thoughts and you think, no, facts, no cliches, what am I actually feeling? And that's actually something I've learned through the collaboration, you have to be true to yourself. So for instance, the one with the boulders and under a supple sky was an interpretation, but it's not literal. So she mentions in that bog myrtle and lots of other things that are not actually there. And what I was I'm tuning into the same feeling that I got that she's describing within the landscape, and interpreting my experience, and then the two places meet. Sadly, I think we have to wrap up.
Yeah. So it's,
Yeah.
it's lovely to
Okay.
be here together. Thank you
Lovely.
very much.
Yeah, that's really nice.
Thanks,
So what-
Alexander.